What's going on, everybody? Special Tuesday edition of Don't Call This a Podcast. We are going to be a little busy on Thursday, so we're coming a little bit early this week. So if you're watching this live, we appreciate you. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, thank you again. That's why you're getting it about a day or so early. But yeah, we are here with 7 days to go. My anxiety is all over the place. I wish it would stop. I simply cannot stop looking at polls once an hour, even though nothing is updating. It's like looking in your refrigerator when there's been no food added, but you still keep looking because you're hungry. So we've got a lot to talk about this week. Joining me as always are my co-hosts, Ron. What's happening, Ron?
I just left the Pokemon dojo, so I'm good. I'm here.
You got your slowpokes.
Yeah, catch your slowpokes.
Pokemaster in training as part of the blog. And joining us as well is Courtney Campbell. What's going on, Courtney?
The senior Pokemaster over here.
Yes. Yes. Large and in charge. So we appreciate y'all joining us once again. There's going to be a lot to talk about today. As we mentioned before, the election is 7 days away. So all of that stress you feel, let's get it out in this episode. And just, a lot has really happened in the last, 4 days since we've been on.
Yeah. Too much.
So let's go ahead and get started with the big news of the week, for better or for worse. Amy Coney Barrett has been confirmed and sworn in on the Supreme Court. The Senate, including Mitch McConnell, rushed this hearing and decision within a few weeks compared to the months they took off to try and pass COVID relief bill, which they didn't do at all. And so here we are with an incredibly unqualified white woman on the Supreme Court, and Amy Coney Barrett, who has not heard, I don't think she's heard, but 2-3 cases?
She hasn't tried a case.
She hasn't tried a case at all. So Amy Coney Barrett has not tried a case at all. It's being added to the Supreme Court. We've already
been before the Supreme Court, like things that are very standard.
We've already got a finger wag from Republicans about Democrats wanting to expand courts, including Joe Biden's brilliant response, I thought, last week when finally pressed on it, saying that it would basically go to a committee and the committee would ultimately decide if we should expand the court. Hit, it's going to be yes. But they won't reveal that till after the election, which is very, very smart, in my opinion. Anyway, Courtney, as the person in command of the White Woman Extension button, as you often have on Twitter, let's talk a little bit about Amy Coney Barrett swearing in and what that means for the federal courts moving forward.
Oh, it's not great. It's not great. First of all, she was only put there in 2017. Let's talk about how woefully underqualified she was. My favorite thing has been looking at legal Twitter, because there are the ins and outs. A lot of people are saying she would even really qualify to be a clerk for the Supreme Court. And let's just talk about the amount of privilege, because we were talking in the group chat about how you need master's degrees and PhDs for things that they're only offering $40,000 a year for. And you're just like, And then you have this white woman who's extremely privileged. She was a professor, but she hasn't really tried a case. She hasn't been before the Supreme Court. Things that are very standard that was just handed to her so she can kind of do some bidding. We have the most conservative Supreme Court in how long? I know it's bordering a century, it's 50. Yeah, it's over 50 years. But it's the most conservative Supreme Court. Oh my gosh, how can I say this? Mitch McConnell, I saw your hands. It's coming, and I can't, and Satan's just can't wait to have you back home. So I'm waiting for that moment. Okay, when we get that news notification that the Turtley Man has passed, huge party at my house. If it's during COVID times, which would be excellent, I will throw a Zoom party. I will cook for everyone for free. I'm so serious. That's all I'm going to say. That's the safest way I can say it, because I said it, tone it down. I never explicitly said it. I just said I'd have a celebration.
But your mom will be dropping a comment here shortly, I'm sure.
Yeah, she will. She's like, "Are you okay with me dropping comments?" I'm like, "Sure."
Ron, let's swing this around a little bit, because Democrats have toed the line in terms of, or at least Biden has toed the line in terms of saying whether or not he would vote to expand the court. Do you think this is something that needs to happen? How do you think it should be done? And do you agree with the Biden team strategy in terms of how they've played this question?
First, I think in order to answer that question, I need to. Oh, nice cup, by the way.
Thank you.
Wait, show that again. Show that.
But yeah, in order to answer that question, I first have to give my opinion as to why I think they rushed this confirmation, and it's clearly a repeat of the 2000 election. If things get muddy and it has to go to the Supreme Court, then you have Kavanaugh already, giving comments about like, well, do those absentee ballots have to be counted, or can we call the election on election night? So that's why I think they rushed this. Now, to answer your question, obviously, Biden is considering this because even with fracking, and by the way, I got to keep bringing up fracking. He's like, we're not gonna stop fracking. We never said that. But when it comes to this question, he's always like, we'll see.
Kamala as well. She was just like, when Pence out, she was just like, it's like that Mariah Carey clip. She's just like, just like.
So yeah, Ryan, I'm actually going to pivot to your idea because so my answer is yes, they should expand the courts, and they should expand the court to 13 justices. Ryan, why should they do that?
Well, they should do it because there are 13 federal districts. And I tweeted this out. Thanks, Ron, for lobbying this to me. But there's 13 federal districts. So the way that this should go, and the Supreme Court has been expanded over time, and most recently was expanded to 9 to account for the additional federal districts. But the way that this should go is you add 4 more justices to the bench, and then you say, okay, we're going to set term limits. Now, those term limits can be different than what we set for the president, even the Senate. Senate gets 6-year terms. You can set for, judicial bench 12 years, whatever you want to set it to be, but it's a one-time 12-year term. When that happens, when their 12 years are up, and what you can say is anybody that's been on the court for longer than 12 years currently, their term ends in 4, however you want to set it up. But what happens is you then put it to a vote for the people to choose who they want on the Supreme Court bench. Because the previous tradition when it comes to the Supreme Court is that we have the president nominate a judge, correct? And they're nominated typically from the other federal courts based on their experiences, et cetera, because at the time, the president was literally put up by electors and not the people. It wasn't truly a populist election. So in shifting and having the shift, if you have 13 districts and 13 justices, when they end their term, whatever that federal district is, that is permanently set, wherever that federal district is, you go to a vote, okay? Each party can nominate who they want. You can do it without party. We can work out those details and semantics later, but it should go to a vote. If you want to bring them just for the people that are currently on the bench at that district level, right? They're currently on the federal appellate courts, then you can do that. But what has to happen is there needs to be some kind of reform that involves people voting for justices. We have to pull out of the idea that, well, it's this long-standing tradition that we've always had presidents nominate, because we've seen with the Senate since 2016 that in the right situation, it can be obstructed. You can prevent Obama from nominating over 180 different federal court judges. One of those blocked slots, one of those slots that was blocked for Obama ended up going to Amy Coney Barrett. So there's a whole trail here, right? Instead of you can have a president nominate the federal appellate courts. That's fine. Or you can have him voted on at that level, whatever the case may be. But the Supreme Court should be something that is voted in when the other 2 branches of our government include democracy, include almost direct representation, right? And the one bench that is not like that at the federal level is the judicial bench. We vote for judges on a local level. We vote for judges at the county level, at the county seats, but we don't do it beyond a certain point. And that's the problem.
Yeah, yeah, man. This is the highest court of the land. They rule what is and what isn't constitutional. So the people should totally have a say in that. And prior to this, I never liked the way that first the idea of a lifetime appointment for anybody. I've always hated that, and I've just always hated the selection process. It has never been a problem until Obama put up Merrick Garland, and there's like, well, I think we should wait. And then so yeah, the process has always been incredibly stupid to me. It's super outdated. And once again, it kind of ties into the ideal of like originalist, which has been the topic du jour, I guess. But no, it's extremely stupid, and I think it definitely, like, we need to take a look at it and change it.
Well, and I want to add to this too, because I just did a little voice tweet about this because No Name said some stupid
voice
shit.
Voice tweets.
Yes, I finally got it on my work phone. But like, it's just, I think we get to this whole, and we've covered this over and over again about people who are so aggressively for accelerationist policies that they don't stop and see what's in front of them, right? That you see the finish line and you don't see the hurdle that's right there. And so what we have to realize is what Republicans are trying to do is cement minority power. They have done this strategically through the court system, right? So what have we seen that they've said is going to happen over the next 20, 30 years? The demographics of the country are changing. If you want a sample of what that looks like, go look at Gwinnett County in Georgia, a county that is now majority minority. Even though white people make up the biggest block in terms of like 42%, the other 58% are minority groups, including 36% being black. If you look at Snellville, where I live, it is now 44-40 in terms of white and black. So this is a demographic shift that's happening, that's going to happen to this country. And when it happens, these conservatives, particularly white conservatives, see that their power, their voice will be gone. So if they can appoint these 30-year-old judges to the bench, if they can appoint these people who are unqualified, that are just partisan lackeys to these federal courts, then they can control the outcomes of these laws once states like Alabama, Mississippi, and Kentucky challenge the rules, right? The Voting Rights Act was gutted in 2013 because Alabama, Shelby County, Alabama, challenged the Voting Rights Act, and essentially it was ruled that, well, racism don't work like that no more, so we don't need this. That's basically what they ruled. That's why we have 9-hour lines. That's why you have governors taking away voting precincts in places where people can vote, because they're allowed to now. So with dumbasses like No Name saying, well, do you think it's really going to be better under Biden? Yes. Yes, it will.
Like, I think, and to add to that, I think people have forgotten what it was like, before the ACA.
It's because either they were too young to know, or they didn't pay attention to shit until a year ago.
It didn't affect them. But that's the thing. It's like, do people forget what it was like before the ACA? Because I think, as someone that worked in medical social work, especially at the time, talking about the shift, and they were still implementing some changes. Even in 2016, they were still implementing some things that I think people forgot. Like birth control, you had to pay for that shit. I was paying $100 a month. $100 a month. And here's my thing. And like, no one should ever have to justify the reasons that they're on it. I don't care. I don't care. To me, that's a conversation that shouldn't even be had. There's a little bit of an echo somewhere. But who's the echo? Am I the echo?
No, I think it's Ryan again. Okay. Yeah, we got to blame Ryan again.
Okay. Anyway, I think people, like, especially, I see a lot of the accelerationism with younger people, and I think people forgot what it was like before Obama changed a lot of things. I think a lot of people see him as like a lame duck president, but I think people forget what happened in 2012 that made him as such. Again, by planning by the Republicans, and I don't want to go back to that. I don't think people want to go back to that. Like, a lot of people that have the privilege to be an accelerationist, that's a very privileged stance. Like that video I saw from 2016 of that girl that said she voted for Trump as a joke, and I don't think it was a joke. I think this is what a lot of Bernie Sanders. I was a huge Bernie Sanders supporter. I was working with his campaign and stuff. They talked to his wife Jane even because she was a social worker. But I think people went way, and it's not horseshoe. This is not horseshoe. I think people, they only care about issues that affect them, and in that way they're like, well, Bernie's anti-establishment. To me, Trump is also anti-establishment. So that's where people went, and that's what, when we talk about this, that's what we're talking about. You don't care about Black people. You don't care about brown people. You don't care about minorities. You don't care about women's issues. Even if you're a woman, it's because you don't think that's going to be your problem. It's because you don't care. You only care about your student loans. You only care about your healthcare premiums and your bills, and that's it. I have a feeling that if those problems were taken care of, they'd be Republican easily because they don't care. And that's what this is about. And that's one of the goals of this kind of series, I'd say, as well as that you got to care about other people. I hate to tell you.
Well,
this is more than just about you.
Like, and Ron, I know you want to pop back in here, but I want to read a thread that I thought was absolutely
I was just
brilliant.
about to tell you, please pull that thread up.
I know what thread you're talking about.
I'm trying to pull it up. So Ron, stall for me. Oh no, wait, I found it.
Okay.
Here
I was like, I get stall.
Because this is, and I want to credit. I'm going to put his name up here because I want to credit this man for putting this up here at Dapper Domo on Twitter. This is to me a phenomenal thread that kind of gets to the bottom of this entirely stupid what did Obama do for black people? What did Obama do? Because as he says on the thread, people born in 92 and were on their parents' health insurance until they were 25 years old are always the ones asking on Twitter what Obama did for the black community. Your mama bought a brand new car and got $7,000 in trade-in value in 2009 after cash for clunkers. Ironically, that's the car she gave you when you left for college. You're still driving it now. Those big-ass tax refunds y'all get for having kids, Obama did that too. Shout out. All those Pell Grants that you got in college that you used to get a refund so you could buy a MacBook wouldn't have gotten it. You wouldn't have gotten it unless Obama expanded the program in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
He gave you 62 black federal judges. There have only been 228 in history. I think if you do the quick math, it's about 25%. He allowed former felons to qualify for SBA loans. My brother got one of those. He messed it up, but that's beside the point. Thread brother, not my brother. The incarceration rate of black people was at its lowest point since the crime bill during his last year in office. We'll get to that in a second. It's back up under Trump. He created an entire program to ensure that HBCUs got federal funding. He gave HBCUs $4 billion in federal funding per year. He took military-grade equipment away from police officers. He's the reason your parents were able to refinance their mortgage off that damn 80-20 loan. Saved them about $40,000 over the life of that mortgage. He changed the requirements and lowered the fees on FHA loans. Hello, I want to elaborate on this real quick because I'm somebody that was able to take advantage of the USDA and FHA loans that were enacted under his administration that allowed me to purchase land in Huntsville, in North Huntsville, with no money down. All we had to pay were closing costs. I bought a house, and because of where that house is bought, the equity has increased. But it's because of a plan that he helped enact that I was able to get it for at closing. I think we paid maybe less than $2,000. I can't remember the number, but it wasn't expensive. And because of that, I now have that 10-20 fold in equity. So again, to finish this off, federal contractors have to provide sick leave, extended leave, and personal time because of Obama. We're not saying that he was the greatest president to ever walk this earth. But what we are saying is that we need to stop acting like, or people need to stop acting like he was some president that did absolutely nothing for all 8 years he was in office. We have to remember that he was obstructing.
And not,
let me
and not to mention, before you do that, just like the medical end, because people are like, do we just want healthcare? And it's just like, again, first of all, Mr. Matt Lieberman dropout daddy is one of the reasons we don't have a public option. Come for him. I was one of the few people, because I had to do it for a project. I read the whole original ACA plan, and woo, did Republicans gut that shit big time. It is a lot closer to what we wanted it, but Republicans gutted it, and I don't. And
Blue Dog Democrats, those conservative Democrats,
and the conservative Democrats, like we can't leave them out either because they're part of the reason why we're here. Medicaid, a lot less health clinics accepted Medicaid. What ACA did was not just give people health insurance. It put regulations on hospitals, which again, for some, if you're higher up in a hospital, you don't like it, deal with it. It's to protect patients. A lot of patient protection was there. Medicare regulations, hospitals started making more money off of that, and you have to fall under those regulations to be able to accept Medicare. A lot more places started accepting Medicaid. So before you didn't have a lot of really good, a lot of places still don't have good options for Medicaid. Before it was like, oh, you don't have good options for Medicaid. So especially if you're not in a state that expanded Medicaid, it was so many, like tenfold worse than what it is now. And I think it's, to me, of course we should want more, but to me it's the audacity of, you don't know what it's like to not have health insurance because at 23, to have to pay $100 a month for birth control, to you have a pre-existing condition and now you can't leave your shitty job that's abusive towards you, or you get fired from your job. Cobra needs a lot of work, but at least it's there. It's there. So there's something. But before, I think people need to read into what things were like before and actually read the ACA and the original plans and go back and look at what happened in the news. Read articles, because I think people are kind of uneducated as to what happened, because 2012 was the first election I voted in. So I think a lot of people that are my age and younger, I knew a little bit because I got the very tail end of it. But especially when the recession hit, I think a lot of people were too young, or they just didn't pay attention because it didn't affect them, what things were like. And the fact that I was just talking to my baby brother, who was 10 years younger than me. And I was like, yeah, I was a couple years younger than you the last time they changed the minimum wage. It's the same. And he's a decade younger than me, and it's the same.
Also, if I remember correctly, happened 2008, 2009. Am I wrong there?
I think it was 8.
I was a sophomore.
It might have been. Was it end of Bush administration?
I was a sophomore in high school.
Yeah. Oh, again, and Ron, I know you want to jump in, so I won't take up much time. But I know I was 21 when the Affordable Care Act passed, or I was getting ready to turn 21. So, and even though I knew what was happening, I didn't understand the depth of it. But it's because of that I was able to stay on my parents' insurance. Like, go ahead, Ron. I know you've been wanting to jump in here.
Yeah. First, I want to come in on that. I was like the regional organizer for like that Democratic Party movement. So I was basically calling like old women in like Baldwin County, and like, hey, ACA is a good thing. It's going to be a good thing. You should call your representative and tell them you want it. But anyway, so yeah, but like Courtney said, ACA was totally gutted, and yeah, like people were basically calling it like, oh, this will cause a civil war because how can you force states to yada yada. But anyway, I digress. But anyway, you mentioned a great point in that thread that I want to bring up. Before Obama left office, he left us as in like black people a great gift. He signed an executive order that private prisons will have to phase out. Guess who rescinded that order? Attorney General Jeff Sessions. So
talk about Alabama.
Exactly. And what is Alabama doing now? Like, I'm pretty sure if you live in Alabama, you get commercials that they are hiring for a certain position, wink wink. But this is what I want to say. So if you say that Coppola, as you want to call her, whatever, or the creator of the crime bill wants to take your rights away, look at what Trump has done. Within his first few weeks, he rescinded an executive order that said private prisons have to phase out. Why would we need private prisons in the first place? Answer that question. Think about that. So if you say they're not the same, then your head is up your ass, and I need you to do some homework.
Remove your lens of privilege. You're not as progressive if you're not willing to listen to minority and those who are impoverished issues. It's not about being progressive. It's about you. Ryan, you're muted.
Sorry, I was going to say that we need to hold some of these black folks accountable too. Like,
Joy,
I'm not going to speak to my issues.
Name and all I know, no, but I want to jump in here and hold them accountable too, because we keep getting on this kick about, Biden offered the crime bill. And Biden is now one of the first people to admit that it was a mistake. He's said it several times now. I messed up. But the other thing we need to highlight here is Biden didn't pull this out of his ass. Biden didn't
I was just about to say that. Sorry. I got to jump in. But we say, but what they're saying now is that Joe Biden won't listen to you. He won't yada, yada, yada. It was the black caucuses at the time who got him to do this. They were like, hey, we need this. So it wasn't some nefarious thing that he created on his own. Like black caucuses, look at what Al Sharpton, look at what Jesse Jackson was saying at the time about this thing. They were like, hey, we need this. So And yeah, it's terrible, and that's a part of his legacy. He's going to have to live with that forever. But at the same time, he did it because he was like, I'm not even gonna say he was pressured to do it, but basically he listened to what people were saying to him. These black caucuses that he was
wait, go back. Use that word again. Use that word again.
I said pressured.
No.
Which
what
one?
did he do? What did he do when people approached him with an idea?
Oh, he listened. Yeah, he listened to them. Yeah.
Oh, and the same guy they claim is a centrist that, if you look at his platform now, is incredibly progressive, right? Like, we're talking about the same person, right?
I think also one thing that we mentioned in podcasts before is, and one thing I didn't know because I was born in 1993, so of course, and listening to people that are like older is the environment of the time, not justifying it at all, but people that were around then, there really was a drug problem. Of course, it was handled very poorly, and it hurt a lot of people, absolutely. But I think you also kind of because I did, after we brought that up, I did some digging myself, and it's just like, yeah, I can see where the cause, but it was implemented well. No, it went south, as a lot of things can go. But I think it's not completely fair to take it out of context, because that was 30 years ago.
People have to understand.
It pains me to say it was 30 years ago, but you have to look at it in the context of its time, not of the context of now, and not again, I'm not justifying it, but I think it's unfair to look at it in the context of now versus 1992.
Well, and people have to understand the context of what was going on. The crack epidemic was insane. Like, it was crazy. And what was happening. And yes, that is Reagan's fault. We can sit up here and say that it was, we can talk about whose fault it was, from Nixon declaring a war on drugs to the Southern strategy to Reagan accelerating this. You can go all the way back and you can stack those things up.
It's like almost like Democrats are blamed for the Republican predecessors.
Oh my God.
Whoa.
Like how Obama was blamed for the recession. It's like there's a wait, guys, I think there's a pattern.
So okay, so this is actually my specialty. So I like a few years ago, actually in 2016, when Hillary was up and the Super Predator comments made their way back around. One of my favorite albums and Ryan's as well is Goody Mob Soul Food. So there's a line where they call the Clintons the Clampets, and I used this post to explain why this happened. And basically, I broke down the relation of the crime bill at the time and how it and basically its effect on America. So they're like going into the 90. Oh man, we were really old. Going into the 92 election. Basically, no, before that, let's go back to the caucus. And I will say this every time I mention his name: the worst Democratic candidate ever. He lost the election because they claimed he wasn't going to be tough on crime. That was the conversation at the time. He's not tough on crime. He's not a law and order president. If you do this, the country's going to get out of control. The caucus got blew out. Clinton, on the other hand, he had to embrace this. He had to say, I will be tough on crime. I will cook. So basically, it's a long-standing tradition of Democrats, unfortunately, having to basically carry the water for Republican problems, because that's exactly what happened. Clinton had to come out and say, "Hey, I'm going to be the tough on crime president," and he beat out Bush after Bush had one term. So that's what happened. And that's a conversation that we need to have. Whereas Democrats need to come up with better solutions. Like, okay, you can acknowledge the problem, but maybe don't come up with centrist to like right-leaning solutions for these problems because you're trying to appease some people. That's a conversation we got to have later, but at the same time, acknowledge the problem. Like, that was the issue of the time.
Well, and I want to play this ad that Joe Biden and his team just released today. Well, I don't know if it was released today, but it's something they recently released that just kind of speaks to a lot of the, and we talked about this with our video with Ice Cube, right? Like, we talked about, if you haven't seen it yet, it's on our YouTube channel.
So excellent. I'm biased because they're my friends, but this is some of their best work. Like, this is some good shit. I'm just saying.
If you're watching this on YouTube, go on the channel after this is over and go watch this. But the reason I want to talk about it is because all of the complaints that people keep throwing at Biden's team, they don't stick. right? Like they don't stick because it's clear that a lot of people haven't done the research on what his platform is really about. So I just want y'all to watch this.
This is Joe Biden. Black Lives Matter, period. Not afraid to say it. Inequities have to be met head on. African Americans need a fair shake when it comes to economic opportunity, healthcare, criminal justice, education, and housing. That's why if I'm elected, we'll get COVID under control by listening to the science. We'll raise the minimum wage to a living wage of $15 an hour. Protect the Affordable Care Act. Provide $100 billion in capital for minority-owned small businesses. For a real plan to tackle the student debt crisis. We'll root out systemic racism in our criminal justice system. End cash bail. Decriminalize marijuana and automatically expunge prior convictions. Together we can fix this. Let's build back better. But I can't do it without you. So I'm asking for your vote.
So one other thing he didn't mention there that I want to point out is he also wants to end private prisons, right? Like these are all things that we have asked for. So what I'm having trouble finding out, and I'm diverting off topic here, and we can talk about this, but what I'm having trouble figuring out here is based on everything that a lot of the burning people are upset about, aside from universal health care, which we're talking about expanding the Affordable Care Act to include a public option that I won't go into details about, but is a step closer to Medicare for all, which, by the way, I do want to say that Biden has also said multiple times that he and Bernie agree on where they should go healthcare wise, but they disagree on how to get there. A lot of this is about incremental change. I understand we want big sweeping reform, and that can happen. But when you've been accelerating backwards for the last 4 years, you have to stop the bleeding and then add on the patches that you can build on moving forward. So that's why I wanted to show that video, because a lot of those things are things that people are trying to praise Ice Cube for, acting like he came up with it, when it's been right there in the Biden plan for the last 5 months that he's had that out. No, I'm sorry, for a year. He's had that out for a year. So I don't know. I don't know if y'all want to take anything from there. We will move on next step.
The thing is, and I think you're right, a lot of people don't read websites. I think we have to be so very careful. And I've kind of fallen this way too about trusting what you read. Like we make fun of boomers, but we do this too. It's like people will trust shit off of a tweet, like with a person with 100 followers. And it's just like, have you done any background research? Like we make fun of boomers for doing this, but we do this too. Like you have to, and like I have tried to get in the habit now of like looking at the account, even if it has a check mark, before you believe anything. You have to be so careful with it. And I think a lot of people fall into that very easily. And they fall in, and people are making the same mistakes with misinformation that they did in 2016. You are not. Go ahead. I was going to say you are not immune to propaganda at all. You're not. You're not immune to propaganda. You're not immune to misinformation. No one is.
I was about to. I like laughed in my head because I did like the quintessential the Zoom meeting thing to piggyback off that. But no, seriously. Also, I want you. And I'm not trying to attack like reading comprehension, but I think a lot of people look and we go into this platinum plan, but a lot of people look at that platinum plan and saw that big number 500 billion. They're like, wow, this is automatically. And we go into the video, which you should watch, and they're like, wow, their eyes just got big. They're like, wow, he's pledging so much. But when you actually read that sentence, it's a word salad that says absolutely nothing. So at the same time, as you're reading things, as you're taking in information, and this is me speaking from like my profession, because I always like vet sources 2-3 times over. So as you're reading something, cross-reference it. Be like, okay, I want to see where this person stands on this particular issue, what they said, what other people are saying about the same thing. So make sure you're checking the information you're taking in, make sure you're checking it 2-3 times over, and then the truth is going to be somewhere in the middle. Like, so even read some dissenting views, because you will be able to like, okay, this is consistent with what I think it's saying, so this is what it really means. So yeah, so if you look at certain things, you have to, like I say, just vet your sources, vet the information and the source of the information.
And it's all totally okay to say, well, I don't know right now. Let me look into it. And just as someone, and I'm going to pull this card too, because it's totally fine to pull your expertise. People act like it's a bad thing. I don't care about being humble. I have a degree. I'm a first-gen college student. I studied human behavior, sociology, and psychology. I'm going to deal with it. Too bad. People sometimes know more information than you on things. It's okay. It's totally okay. Like Ron and Ryan know more stuff about me in their fields of expertise. I know more stuff. It's fine. It should be okay. Stop associating your personal self. But I think just from a psychological standpoint, from what I know, I'm not a psychologist again, but I do have background in that area. We have to, and I hate to sound like all boomers, but people, the social media age, especially with shorter character limits and, short videos, and they're studying this now. So there's not a lot of comprehensive information on it, but they're studying it. And to me, it's also kind of, you can also just gauge it really just by looking at it. People's attention spans are so much shorter to the point where articles say 5-minute read, 3-minute read to get people to read it. So you kind of have to break that in your own self. Like, I'm coming as someone that has ADHD. So if I can do it, you, a heteronormative person, can do it. You have no excuse if I can do it and I'm neuroatypical. Okay, so you kind of have to just force yourself to sit down. If you're going to speak on the subject, you need to force yourself to sit down, do what Ron said, cross-reference, read the whole article, not just like the big bold points, because that's not what they want you to see. Republicans have been so good at that, like with the Patriot Act, making it sound good. But the thing is, like, that's marketing. You have to be smart enough to look past marketing. It's like, okay, that's what they're marketing, but what are the small points? And that's anything in life. But and especially with elections, and as we get more and more where things can be easily faked and all that, and we have outside, foreign involvement in elections, you need to be very careful about what you believe. And no one is impervious to this. Not I, not Ryan, not Ron, nobody. So we all have to be careful, and we all have to hold each other accountable. So we're not coming for you. I will come for your reading comprehension because there's not really an excuse. And like I said, I say this, I'm neurodivergent. I can say it, like, if you are, neurotypical, especially, if you're neurodivergent, this isn't for you. But you don't really have an excuse to not fully read something. You don't. I get it. Our brains are being trained to process shorter amounts of information at a time, but you can fight that. You can train your brain. You can. Any psychologist will tell you that. So there's not really an excuse for you to be doing that. And people getting mad about Twitter saying you need to read this article. I love that they're doing that. I love it. Keeps people accountable. It's because one time I retweeted, I was like, even though I knew about the thing, I was like, you know what, this. And I had a thought, I was like, this article could say like something like really egregious in the middle of it, and you wouldn't know because you didn't read it. And I'm like, you know what? Twitter called me on my shit. So good for Twitter on that.
Well, just like, and we're going to shift to another topic in a second, but just like there was an article yesterday, I think, where it was a quote from Dr. Fauci saying that basically the first batch of vaccines that we're going to have aren't going to be designed to treat the virus itself, but to treat the symptoms. And so people were freaking out about it because they didn't quite get what he meant by that. But when you opened up the article and you read the article, he talked about how, because of the timeline that they're putting on this vaccine, that if they can prevent the symptoms and people from feeling those symptoms, then they can prevent the bad parts of COVID from happening to people, especially the other, just kind of the other, what's the word I'm looking for? Some of the things that can damage the body, right? If they can prevent those symptoms, prevent those things from happening.
Side effects.
Yeah, the side effects. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. So if they can prevent those side effects, then they can basically cut down the damage that COVID can do while they work on a vaccine that can prevent the virus from entering the body or from infecting the body. So it's just little things like that again, I want people to read and pay attention. Just like I'm starting to get random comments from this no-name tweet that I sent out with people talking about not reading.
I want to add something, just like be so careful, because again, a lot of these, like, I hate the whole narrative of like, oh, don't trust the media, but we do have to be careful what media sources we trust, especially ones that are bought out by big corporations, or even ones that are just desperate for money. So they have clickbait. Like, I get mad at it. I also get mad at it. They need money. I get it. But especially it's like, oh, this patient died. Oh, this. Now, as someone that has, been a volunteer in the Institutional Review Board at UAB, I do have qualms about a control group for a deadly virus. I do, but I'm not going to get into that. But you need to don't only need the news article. Look down all the way at the bottom, because this is how I used to cheat code finding sources for research papers. You just go to article and use their sources. That's how you do it. But you go to the bottom, they cite their sources. Copy paste into Google search and find it. And you don't have to read the whole thing, because sometimes they can be lengthy, but they have an abstract where it tells you the gist. So even if you could just do the abstract, most people are not virologists. So I'm just asking that you look into it. Vaccines don't work like that. And you have to realize that there's been an anti-vax movement brewing for a long time, of which the president is allegedly a part of, even though he's tweeted about it in the past. So you have to be cautious of that. Do you want to be associated with that? No. My late grandfather had polio, and because no vaccine then, and I'm sure he'd be whooping people's asses if they were like, polio wasn't that bad when he wasn't walking, he was in a wheelchair, and I'm just like, the audacity. But you need to research, right? Again, you cannot be an expert in everything. It's not a personal affront to your intelligence to say that you don't know everything.
Right.
You have to be careful not to fall, and even people that are on my side of Twitter are falling into this. You can't fall into the whole anti-science movement. It's okay you don't have to wholesomely trust every person that purports to be an expert. But if everything makes sense, come on, you're not smarter than them. I'm tired of you. Sorry to go on that rant. I just, it all falls into this with the virus. I've seen people freak too much because they read too much into headlines about the vaccine trials. So
yeah, well, let's move forward, because I know we can get lost on that if we stay on that course. Let's talk. No, you're fine, because I want to say things, but I'm trying to keep myself from saying them. So let's move forward to talk about the main driver of our anxiety, next week's election and the polls, because things are getting very interesting now that Donald Trump has officially pulled all campaign ads from every state that is not Minnesota, Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, clearly showing what his strategy is. This comes at the same time that Joe Biden is actually here in Georgia right now, doing an event, and has just announced that they'll be doing a caravan in Texas, where Kamala Harris just visited earlier this week. So I just want to read off a couple polls that have just kind of come out here that really, really show something interesting. Because for one, Georgia and Texas have had ridiculous early voting numbers. I think 3 days ago in Georgia, we were sitting at 2 days ago, we were sitting at 2.7 million and projected to hit 3 million probably by the end of the week, if not before that. In Texas, you had ridiculous numbers. I think the 46% of registered voters voted early as of yesterday. So you're talking about historic numbers that are really going to add to selection totals. So I don't think there's any doubt that this is going to be one of the highest turnouts in presidential election history. But here's what really gets interesting, because Trump, as we talked about, has now basically said he's given up on Florida. So Biden, who has a lead with seniors and who has a lead with independents in Florida, has a pretty good shot to take that state. But here's what really gets interesting. A new poll from Civic, which is a B-rated pollster, they released several polls about the state of Georgia that showcased not only Biden versus Trump, but Warnock in the special election, and then Warnock compared to Loeffler and Collins. And I want y'all to hear this, okay? So in the presidential election, out of 1,000, over 1,000 likely voters, including weights for different education, things like that, Biden is favored by 5 points over Trump in the Civics poll. On top of that, Warnock is favored at 48% in the general election field. So in the jungle primary, he's at 48% in this poll, 2 away from outright winning. If it goes to a runoff, he is 9 points ahead of Doug Collins, 51-42, and he is 14 points over Kelly Loeffler in this poll. This is a big deal. I don't think that the Senate is going to come down to these 2 seats. I think if we're at the point where Georgia's in play, then Democrats have had a great night and we're over 50. But if we get here, you're looking at a possible Georgia sweep, because Oh, by the way, Ossoff is sitting at 51% in this same poll over Purdue and Hazel. So,
by the way, he's been on it with the ads.
yes,
Like again, I mention it, but like he's, I guess I'm like in his target demographic, but especially like on YouTube and all that, he's been on it with the ads. Like his like people are on, make them so quick. It's just like I see a Purdue ad, which are like so bad that they're hilarious. I think Michael pinpointed where it's like, oh, like most of these claims are untrue. It's like you can't even say all of the claims.
that's the thing. Only thing Purdue has done, his only 2 ads have been Ossoff is lying. My trade deals during COVID were not
and
that
he's
bad.
like the liberal agenda. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Courtney or did y'all lose me?
I'm right here.
Okay.
Am I gone?
Okay. You bugged out for a second. And everybody bugged out. Okay.
No,
anyway, the 2 ads he's running, for those of you that are not in Georgia, David Perdue, who's running against
they're hilariously bad. I'm sorry. I've laughed.
The only 2 ads he's running is that John Ossoff is the dirty, crazy liberal, and those ads John Ossoff was running about me making money during COVID hearings
Mostly.
or the coronavirus. They're mostly not kind of
all of them. I had to pause because we were laughing so hard. Like he can't even say all of them. Because
it's also not. If you read the sources on who they're quoting, none of them are big name. None of them are big name papers. They're all real websites.
Because we Googled them, and that's what's crazy. But Ossoff, and like he's got his wife who's a doctor. I was like, brilliant, spectacular, excellent. Play that card. Play it. Play the hell out of it. I tried to use a different word because my mom was watching, but but he's been on it, and I think again the younger Democrats and just the ones that are more in tune to the people are way more. And I've seen a lot of Warnock ads too, and it's just like they're really in tune.
Because I feel like you and I are dominating this, so I want to go to Ron in a second. But I
He
also want
hasn't seen. He said, "What ads are you gonna talk about?"
Warnock's back of the line ad is damn brilliant. He knows he's so ahead of the curve with the other Democrats in this race that he's basically like, look. Jungle primary, names are in ABC order. There's a ton of Democrats. I'm at the bottom. Just go down there and bubble my name. Like that's his
brilliant.
Matt Lieberman, you're irrelevant. Doug Tarver, you're irrelevant. Like
Matt Lieberman, drop out. He's 2%, and Warnock's at 48. Drop out. But yeah, if you have a Georgia ballot, like that whole thing is its whole own section. It's like this. And like him saying the bottom of the ballot was brilliant because if I didn't know, I would be so overwhelmed by all the names. I would be so overwhelmed. So just great job. And I have high hopes. But again, Matt Lieberman, drop out.
So, Ron, let's throw to you here because I think there's a lot going on, especially in the race in Alabama that we've talked about time and time again before, where Jones is inching closer and closer. We've seen we've had leaks about internal polling putting Jones ahead. We've had all kinds of other polling saying that, maybe it's a little bit closer than we thought, all within 1%. So where are we sitting right now, Ron? Do you have confidence that Democrats can take majority in the Senate? And with Trump pulling these ads, what do you think we're signaling here?
At the very least, I guess so I have a best case scenario, a realistic scenario, and the worst outcome. My realistic scenario is that yes, Democrats do claim the Senate, but Biden loses. That's my realistic outcome. I'm just going to say that out there. I asked the question earlier in the group, but that's my realistic outcome. But yes, I do think it's very likely that yes, the Democrats are going to flip those seats needed. I say that almost with full confidence, and I tell you guys all the time, I'm a pessimist. So I say that with full confidence that yes, I do think the Democrats will hold both chambers of Congress. So I will say that. So, but it's interesting that you mentioned Trump pulled ads in those key states. First of all, you can't celebrate the people who attempted to kill the governor and expect to win that state. So Michigan, boom, out of here. Ohio, wrap. Pennsylvania, a wrap. Now it gets interesting in Florida, where Hillary would have won if you idiots did not give 3% to Gary Johnson. So if he's pulling out of Florida, that's where it gets dicey. If he's pulling out of Georgia, and if Biden is in Georgia and in Texas this late in the game, then yeah, their internal polling is telling them that, hey, like this isn't even like a toss up right now. We have a legit chance because, and I will say much to, and a bit of a tangent here. One thing Biden has always done is that he's always talked about the money in politics. So he has been right about that. And much to their detriment, I will say one thing I've hate Democrats have done in the past is that they don't really hit places like Atlanta, Birmingham, Jackson, Mississippi in the heat of the game. Those places are typically ignored. So the fact that Biden would go to Georgia right now, the fact that he will go to Texas right now shows that those states are a toss up. So if you get Florida, if you get Georgia, if you get Texas, then yes, Biden's going to win. And on the same token, that's why I'm confident that the and once again, I have the utmost confidence in Georgia that they're going to get those seats. So yes, I do think that both chambers of Congress will be blue. As far as the presidential election, it's going to get crazy, but setting all things equal, I think Joe Biden does have a chance, but we'll get into.
We'll see.
We'll get
talk
into
about that. We'll talk about
Courtney,
that.
Courtney, I want you to kind of give your opinion. How do you feel seeing that Trump has basically pulled all of his ads in all but 4 states? And I want to add this to the mix, that Bloomberg has now injected money into Texas, Florida, and Ohio.
Which finally, like I'm like, put your freaking money where your mouth is. Like,
and
I'm tired of him.
He and Tom Steyer have also paid the fines and fees, along with, I think there was another celebrity, I can't think of who, in Florida, of felons in Florida.
And Republicans were like, you can't do that. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. All of a sudden, you're not 4 billionaires when they do stuff like that. But no, I am liking Democrats taking this more seriously. I'm a little bit worried at how they're kind of getting a little overconfident with us right now. Again, the polls are different than they were with Hillary, but again, I don't want anyone getting overconfident. I am with Ron. I'm very cautious with the presidential election, but I think we're going to be flipping the Senate 100%. I think Ossoff, I think he's good. Warnock, I'm mostly confident. Now with the pulling the ads, I'm personally happy about, because as a suburban white woman, I've been getting so many Trump mailers that it fills up my mailbox, and I'm not joking. And again, I have never indicated anything Republican. It's just because I'm registered in the voting rolls as a white woman. Michael has not gotten one. However, it's just funny, the demographics targeting to me, but he has been getting multiple texts in Spanish and English every day. And I think it's only because he marked that he's a Hispanic male. It's just, to me, the demographics targeting is something I want to look into after this election. But leave me alone, Donald Trump. I want nothing to do with you. But
Courtney, do you know that Cory Booker is coming for you? Just to interject real quick.
My mom, if you told my mom that, my mom would be like, yes, he can come for me all he wants. Mom, I called you out, so leave me alone about flirting or about thirsting for Cory Booker. Mom, it's weird. But anyway, yeah, I think it's a sign, one, they're running out of money. We talked about that, and I think he is giving up on those, either that or he's kind of overconfident with it. So I think Florida, I think it's a mix of both. Florida, I think he might be overconfident, but yeah, I think it's a very interesting strategy. And another strategy that's interesting too, to me, it just shows they're going to try to steal the election. Is what I think. I think they're like, screw this, screw all this. We're like, we got the Supreme Court. Let's go. Is what I'm getting from it.
I want to elaborate on that, because there's something that I want to talk about here that really. There's something I want to talk about here that I've heard that tossed around. But here's my thing, right? First and foremost, we talked about the early voting numbers. We talked about everything that revolves around what they're doing with Texas and Georgia. To me, Trump and his team blew through so much money, and this has been a known thing, right? They blew through so much money that they've had to figure out where to do their spending. They've done it online, primarily YouTube, which is a catch-all net with really terrible ads, but they've used YouTube and they've used the internet to advertise. When it comes to television markets, here is the thing to remember. Biden leads the elderly. You know why he leads the elderly? Because Trump has brushed off COVID, and he and his campaign staff have essentially given up on it. Mark Meadows said that this week. So that was said 2 days ago. They're just like, we can't contain it, whatever. So he's losing senior voters, right? Boom, Florida. He is losing independents in Florida. No, we don't know what the numbers are going to be like on election day. We don't know how many Republicans are going to show up. We also don't know how many Democrats will be in that number. One thing we also don't know is out of these Democratic and Republican counts, how they're voting, because a lot of registered Democrats voted Trump in 2016, and a lot of Republicans this time around who are registered Republican who may plan to go back in 2024, depending on who the nominee is, or might vote Joe Biden. Like, that's a thing that we know is going to happen. We know there's going to be crossover. So we can't tell purely from numbers. What intrigues me is that this is not a competent administration or campaign.
Are you telling me that this businessman and supposed billionaire didn't handle his money well?
No.
What?
So let me pontificate on this a little bit more, right? They see their internal polling. When presidential campaigns, and this is something, shout out to Pod Save America for talking about this. They have a bunch of Obama staffers. If you haven't listened to it, it's worth listening to. But they talk about all the time how campaigns don't find one path to 270, right? They explore all the different paths that they can win. So for Biden, in his eye, the most competent pathway is to win those Rust Belt states that Hillary Clinton lost in 2016, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. If he has that, it's over. On top of that, he's got Arizona right now. He's in the lead in Arizona, and it's a toss-up in North Carolina. And now we're showing data for Georgia, for Texas, and for Ohio. And on top of that, he's ahead in Florida. So Biden campaign sees that, okay, well, hey, if Trump does win Pennsylvania, we've got these other outs. If he does win Wisconsin, we've got Arizona. Those electoral votes offset. If he does win Pennsylvania, we've got Florida. So those electoral votes offset. He sees that path. Donald Trump, in looking at this, only sees one path. It's to re-win everything he won in 2016 because he's not gaining grounds in other states. Or it's to, as they've done through suppression tactics, muddy those gaps enough to where it is close in those crucial states. But that requires near perfection. And what I mean by that is every single thing has to go Donald Trump's way for it to get to a point where they can try and force the stop of counts on election night for Pennsylvania and Michigan. What do you think of that nature? But here's the other thing on top of that. The states that count absentee ballots early include Texas, Ohio, Iowa, and there's one, I think Florida. Florida's another one of those where the first votes counted are absentee. So after those votes are counted, now you're counting the current votes that are coming in the night of. So from absentee, if Joe Biden is up, it takes a storm to bring Donald Trump back in those states. So if he tries to pull the let's stop it on election night, he could very well be looking at a scenario where before the votes are counted, Texas is blue and Georgia is blue and Florida is blue and there's no path and he cuts himself off. So his only course of action would be to let the votes be counted and then it furthers the landslide. So that's what I'm saying when I say it's confident is that I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm not saying Trump can't happen and that he can't steal it. I'm saying that there's a very exact path that has to happen for that to go down. And if you see me getting super anxious on election night, it's because all of that shit is coming together and that pathway is happening. But it's a very specific path that has to happen. You can see as we said, they've been telegraphing this for months of what they're trying to do. But the problem is they're pigeonholed because the votes in the polls are so against them that there's only one or two scenarios that can work out in their favor. And that's what I've been trying to point out.
Both involve voter suppression.
And that's going to be a factor, right? So when we see these places, like if we see Georgia as Biden +6, you can bet that if Biden wins, it's by 1 or 2%, right? Because of suppression tactics. If we see in Pennsylvania, I don't really worry about in terms of suppression tactics because of what the state has done. I worry about them stopping count early. But we can see in Michigan, right? In some of the ways that they may try different things in different counties and districts in Michigan, that 8% might be 5 realistically. But that's the thing. I think that we're poised for a blowout if things go right, but there is a pathway where Trump can steal this. And that's really the only way that this can happen. And that's what I've been trying to tell people is that, yes, they are telegraphing what they're going to do, but it's a really specific
Look at Wisconsin, which could flip. It's so
Wisconsin could flip, but it may not be consequential, right? If Wisconsin stays red, it may not mean anything in the wrong one because if Biden gets Arizona, that's 11 versus 10. electoral votes.
Georgia and Texas.
And Georgia is 16. Texas is 38. If Texas comes back in Biden's favor, if we look up at the early vote count and Biden's up like 10 or 12 points in Texas, good night. Like that's what I'm trying to say to people is that I understand I'm being pessimistic. This is what my gut is telling me to not get my hopes up, but I'm seeing the pathways that are available, and Trump's are getting shorthanded, and that's why they're trying to focus on these 4 states because they don't have a lot of money, so they've got to find the most effective place, the most bang for their buck, where maybe
Which is
something
why
happens.
you have the email thing being brought up, even though Hunter Biden's actually completely irrelevant and no one cares. They're unfounded, but what worked with Hillary Clinton is because she was really well known and has been a household name since the 90s. No one knows who Hunter Biden is. And another problem is that they're going after his drug addiction, which affects
already those suburban white women or just really anybody with a heart and
Democrat and Republican families. Like that's a universal issue, which was very stupid, which kind of shows how out of touch they are, is to attack that. And they're like, how dare Joe Biden get angry? Like my mom is a very calm and soft and sweet person, but if you talk bad on my name, she's scary. She scares me.
Well, just think about how many rural areas had opioid addictions, right? How many people were struggling with that? How many families were struggling with that? So for you to go after that on national television, those soft red voters or voters who've been thinking about not going for you
and
are
the
all
interruptions.
Yeah.
Like that. It's just like the strategy wise, it hasn't been very smart. They tried to play the same card. They're pretty much trying to replay 2016, which could happen, but they're not doing it as well. Which has me a little bit more optimistic. Also, just one quick while we're talking about votes, if you have your absentee ballot at this point, unless you have no other choice, don't mail it. Even if you try to get a provisional, because I told my mom this, because she's like, I have it now. And I'm just like, go. If you can't drop it, provisional. That's it. It's too late. We're a week. They have disabled pretty much the mail, the postal service for this reason. Do not mail it because we don't want a situation what they're trying to do. Yeah, she's scary. Don't do that. She's scary. I've seen her because I had a teacher make an ugly comment about my ADD that she got her woman's face. That was scary. Anyway, but they're in some states they're trying to play where they can retroactively discount certain absentee ballots. So at this point, if you can't Dropbox it, try to get a provisional one. Do not mail it. Do not mail it. I'm begging you not to mail it. It's too late. It's too late. So look up and see what your state's guidelines are for being able to do a provisional or just to renounce your absentee and be able to do it in person. Do it now. Do not wait. Do not wait. That's all I'm going to say. Oh, and if you're in Georgia, you can get text alerts. I got a text alert yesterday that my absentee ballot was accepted. So keep following up with that because it's not just, I turned it in. You have to make sure they received it and that they accepted it. It was a 5-day difference. I didn't get a sticker because give me stickers. Person. Yeah, I didn't because I don't like people, but and it's a pandemic. But yeah, if it's just be careful. It was I dropped it off. I found out it was a police station / fire station. They're directly at a ballot that's close to the location. It still took them 5 days to receive it. So you want to do that early.
All right, so let's do this before we get out of here. Yeah. Which Ron already kind of talked about. His prediction for election night. But I do want to know, Ron, where do you see this going? What do you see the Senate numbers looking like? Before we get out of here, I do want to point out something else important about this election that I think we also need to hamper on is that, as you've seen with our interviews, state electorates are important. State legislators are important. We are at a point, according to the National Conference of State Legislatures, there are 18 vulnerable state chambers this fall, with 13 of them being Republican. So there is a chance that Democrats can also take over state legislatures, which goes a long, long way in local laws, local ordinances, things like Medicaid expansion, all of that. Go ahead, Courtney.
This is also not absentee ballot. This is also a U.S. Census year, which they also cut short. The census count.
Yep.
This year is not just Donald Trump. This is the next decade. Not even further than that, but at the very least, census year's elections should not be played with. We saw what happened in 2012, right? Or in 2010. It's just like we have to take this so seriously because this is your local organizations, your local food banks, social work organizations. that pothole on your street, especially if you're in Atlanta, it's everything that affects your life. And if you complain about it, it's the small things.
If you're in Texas or if you're in Georgia, these are two states that are likely going to get more congressional seats. And the last thing that we need is for Republicans to be the ones to control what those districts look like. If you don't think right now, I think Gwinnett County is served by like 4 different districts at the state level, and on the U.S. congressional level, it's 2. This is a county with almost 1 million people. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about those state legislatures are important, because usually in the House of Representatives for a state, that's who draws the lines. So Texas, Georgia, both of those are states that can flip. But Ron, yes, what is your prediction election night in terms of how do you see this going electorally, and how many senators do you see Democrats picking up? How many senators in total do you think they'll have?
So yeah, to go back to my prediction, I do think things look promising for Georgia. So even if unfortunately I will say this, we just had him on, Doug Jones, and my prediction is if this were a special election or election where you didn't have to factor in straight party voting, I think he would blow he who shall not be named out the water. But I'm really worried because the straight ticket voting may be affected. Yeah, it's probably going to be a problem here. So even if we lose Senator Jones, and I hope we don't, because I think he's a great representative for the state and has more to do and should do more. But if we do, I do think we pick up one in Georgia.
Make him the Attorney General of the United States.
Do it.
Okay. Now we're heating up. So yeah, I like I said, I think we control both chambers.
Pick a better person for it. Pick a better person.
Yeah. So I think we control both chambers of the Senate. That's I have absolute confidence in that. Now, if we were to set all things equal, I think it would be a landslide. Hillary, as unpopular as she was, and even with low turnout, she won the popular vote. Biden would blow Trump out the water with all things equal. As you said, Ryan, there's been a huge wave of early voters. In those key states, when those votes get counted early, it's gonna look very promising for Biden, and that's why. And don't make no mistake, that's why Trump is saying, if the ballot isn't received by election day, don't count it. We should only count what. And by the way, this has never been the case. When a winner is declared on election night, it's all projections, because votes are still being counted after the fact. It's projections. But anyway, so that's why he wants it to stop on the night of the election. So what I will say this, I do think Joe Biden will win. What happens after that, I can't call it. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. So that's my honest prediction.
Courtney.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Ron. I am firmly confident, if everything was fair, that Joe Biden would blow Trump out of the water. I'm fairly confident that Ossoff is going to win. I'm little less confident, but I'm still fairly confident about Warnock, Matt Lieberman drop out. But
I taught you well.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this has been Ryan's thing forever. Like, Ryan has been one of the very first that has been on Matt Lieberman. But anyway, I am extremely worried. I think whatever is going to happen is going to be unprecedented. I think the Democrats need to grow a pair. I think that the Democrats need to be ready to fight regardless, because I saw a tweet that said that the Supreme Court begins meeting again November 10th, right after the election, week after the election. So I think we need to be ready to be calling representatives. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm a little worried. I think, and I may sound, this is not me being hyperbolic. This is not me being dramatic. I think that the Republicans with Tea Party is what they used to be. We should probably have a own thing. I think we're talking about doing that project, but they are setting up what I think could be a possible coup. Which a lot of people are like, oh, it could never happen in the United States. First of all, the United States has dismantled so many countries where coups have happened, and they've facilitated so many coups. It's a little ironic that it finally happened here, but the United States is not immune to that happening. And by all means, this is an administration that would throw a coup. So I'm a little worried about that. I think it would have to, and with Ryan, I think it would have to be an early lead as soon as possible where they can't go ahead and start that setup. I think it has to be so overwhelming of a win, and not only for the presidential election, but I think for Senate seats as well. I think we have to sweep. But at that point, I think even then they could still try to say, oh well, we got a full, we got a majority, extremely conservative majority in the Supreme Court. We're going to pull 2,000, but even more insane. In Kavanaugh, again, I highly suggest you look up Kavanaugh's role in the 2000 election. Like, this is everything.
And Coney Barrett.
And Coney Barrett. I think everything people need to look into that. I think if the Republicans lose, they're not going to go out easily. And I'm begging the Democrats to grow spines. I understand it's a little bit more difficult, but we can't. You got to play dirty too.
That lame duck session has to be a lame duck session. Can't shit go down at all. Like that, it has to be. So this is. I'm sorry, Courtney. I didn't mean to cut you off.
We're gonna riot if they replace RGB. Where are the riots? Where are the buildings burning? All these viral tweets that are
all the pure socialism folks, all the pure communism folks. A lot of them ain't been out there. Some of them have. I'll give them their credit. They've been out there, but some of them haven't. But I'm going to give my prediction now, because to me, this is what needs to happen in order for there to be as little fight as possible, little legitimate fight, right? In terms of people actually giving a shit what Republicans try and do when it comes to throwing a coup. This is what it has to look like to me. It just 400, close to 400 electoral votes. You can play with Texas if you want to in terms of, where it goes. But this is what I think will happen. I think with them throwing those votes out in Wisconsin, I think Wisconsin is going to end up staying red. The thing that people need to remember, and I talked about the changing demographics earlier, but people need to remember that you're probably going to see a future electoral map. And I'm not saying like in 4 years or 8 years or anything like that, but you're probably going to see a future electoral map that consistently looks something like this, right? Like where some of these southern states, as people migrate down here, end up going blue and they end up getting larger electoral counts. I think that's the thing that people need to keep an eye on. And that's what makes the 2016 and 2020 so crazy, is that I think people sometimes feel like Trump won those Midwestern states by a huge landslide. And it wasn't that. Like in total, it was less than 30,000 votes across 3 different states that he won. So it should be recalled that it took a perfect storm of just shit happening for him to win. It took Hillary being somebody who was in the spotlight, like Courtney said, who had a lot of negative press against her, the James Comey letter. It took, it took the emails. It took all of those things coming together for her to barely lose. So now you put this white man here that people can trust, that people are more willing to vote for.
It was with Obama. Yeah,
that was with Obama, which is still one of the most well-liked presidents, presidents alive. You put those things together, and you have the possibility for Biden to win in a landslide. So I really think that this is going to be something where Pennsylvania flips back and Michigan flips back, and then Biden gets Arizona because he's got Cindy fucking McCain campaigning for him,
which is insane.
But I think you have a Biden win because of those states alone, and then Georgia
and the pandemic and the pandemic. I think if he had handled the pandemic better, or if the pandemic didn't even happen at all, I think he would have had this in the bag. Yeah, if I'm being 100%, and which shows just like the incompetent. And obviously, he should care. He should care for other reasons, but at the very bare level of strategy, because he doesn't care about people. That just shows the level of incompetency that they couldn't predict that would affect his electability.
Which is all the more reason why I don't think he's playing 4D chess like a lot of people think he is. Everything that they're doing voter suppression wise, they've told you they're doing. So I don't want to say it's easy to overcome it, but there's a strategy to overcome it. And I feel like the Democrats have done that strategy, which is why I feel like this is going to be a heavy blow in Biden's favor. And I really feel like we're going to end up with 52 or 53 Democratic senators, including Jamie Harrison, knock on wood, pray to God, but including people like Jamie Harrison and Teresa Greenfield in Iowa. If those go, and then we get the 2 in Georgia, and then we're also getting possibly Cal Cunningham, that's 5. I've kind of given up hope on Steve Bullock. And then hopefully Sarah Gideon. So that's +6. And then
Not
if
to
we lose,
mention in
if we lose Doug,
2022, I have a strong feeling 2022 Texas might go blue with their governor.
oh yeah, no,
because-
it's gonna happen.
Governor
Right.
Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like it was closer than it had ever been for Texas.
Well,
So
and Cornyn, let's not forget, John Cornyn is not necessarily going to walk to the finish line for the Senate seat. I mean, this may be end up being as close as Beto, if not closer. So, I mean, I think we should point that out too. We should point out that Mike Espy in Mississippi is within 4 points. Like, this is not
In Mississippi, which is the one state that people I've tried my best to get better about. People have been dunking on Mississippi, and that's why we can't discount these southern states of like, well, I'm in a red state, it doesn't matter. Look at you, Big Doug Jones. What?
outside of Georgia. Mississippi has the largest black electorate in the United States. Georgia has 34% of its electorate being black, and Mississippi is like 32%. Even though Mississippi has a larger black population in percentage, Georgia has a larger percentage of the electorate. So that's something to remember. When people dunk, like you said, when people dunk on the South, we're gonna look up here in the 2028 or 2032 election, and your Rust Belt is going red and your Deep South is going blue. These are things that are probably going to happen in terms of not in Alabama, but possibly Mississippi and Georgia and South Carolina,
Possibly Louisiana as well.
possibly Louisiana being reliably blue places in the future. And that's what people have to understand. This long game for the Republicans is knowing that demographics are shifting and that the map is going to shift.
People are shifting south. It's kind
Yes.
of like the opposite of what happened. And if you live in the Atlanta metro area, like it's anecdotal, because I'm one of them, but I'm from Alabama, so I don't count it. You're just like, there's so many people, especially from like Chicago and New York, that are moving here. So it's anecdotal, but it's easily backed up. There's so many people, and I know Illinois for a fact because I follow news. People are like just falling out of Illinois. They're like just coming out of Illinois in droves, and they're coming to the South. So when you are like, like, oh, but they're all just mega land, like, travel 5 minutes outside your city and you see a Confederate flag.
Yes.
You too, California.
Yes.
So
you're
just
safe, New York.
stop it. I'm going to fight you. Meet me outside. Turn your location on. I'm tired of you.
All right. Next
Sorry.
Tuesday, we will be live.
And I will have a wine bottle. I will.
I gotta have something.
I'll have my bottle of Maker's Mark up here.
Sorry,
with
Mom.
me.
I'm going to be so intoxicated.
Yeah.
So next Tuesday, starting at, I think we'll probably start at 8. It just depends on when the first polls start closing.
8.
Yeah.
Wait, we got to be, because we got multiple time zones. 8 Eastern.
8 Eastern. It's more than likely we'll get started. We'll send out-
I might be passed out if it's 8 Central.
Yeah.
no. We
It's just gonna be me like this.
We might start a little bit earlier, but the plan is to go as far into the night as we possibly can with the election before we all either cry ourselves to sleep or drink in celebration. Or if we don't know anything, which is even more dooming.
We're not gonna know anything. And not to cut you off, but I just want to say, people, be prepared not to know the results of the election for weeks. It could come down to that. So yeah, if someone declares a winner on election night, it's probably a lie. So
check your
especially
sources.
if the winner is Trump, because I don't see Trump winning on election night. I don't see it being that decisive. Yeah. So, all right. So make sure you join us next Tuesday. We'll be live for that. For Courtney, for Ron, we appreciate y'all tuning in. Make sure you follow us on the Twitter at the KWC blog. Anything y'all want to plug before we get out of here?
Those two links in the comments. Check those out. It's the Ice Cube video, and it's also what I was talking about earlier with the Trump with the Clampets and the Clintons thing. It's and also if you haven't listened to Goody Mob Soul Food, then what are you doing with your life? Go listen to that as well.
I also just want to say again, I didn't contribute anything to the video. I'm highly biased because these are my friends. This is also my podcast too. But I think truly this is some of their finest work. And it deserves a listen. They did a really good job. A lot of thought was put into it. I have been hyping this up for weeks because I know that it's something they're passionate about. So I highly ask, and it's the same thing that YouTube. I will track you down and force you to watch this video. And it's just like,
just my piplup, my glocked up piplup. I'm just be like, I'm gonna show up to your front door and just be like, watch the video.
And
I in fact watch it a few times.
My evil Togepi. All right. Thank y'all for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Have a wonderful week. Go vote, please, if you haven't yet. Go vote.
Absentee, don't mail it. Find another way.
Mm-hmm.
Peace.
Peace.